Do we have Trump? This is a Mandela heavy show, right? So,
I have some Mandela here. This is from Long Walk to Freedom, and I think somebody might have missed the point. Like, I never said Mandela was pro-terrorism, despite them calling him a terrorist. This is from Chapter 45 of Long Walk to Freedom. In planning the direction and form that the MK would take, the MK was the ANC's sort of defense wing, we considered 4 types of violent activities: sabotage, guerrilla warfare, terrorism, and open revolution. For a small and fledgling army, open revolution was inconceivable. Terrorism inevitably reflected poorly on those who used it, undermining any public support it might otherwise garner. Guerrilla warfare was a possibility, but since the ANC had been reluctant to embrace violence at all, it made sense to start with a form of violence that inflicted the least harm against individual sabotage. Now, if you ask me what I would do if I was 18 and in Gaza, I like to think I would say, hey guys, Nelson Mandela in Chapter 45 says this about terrorism, right? Like, I like to think that, but it's like, what use does that imaginative
it's a privilege to be able to,
it's a thought experiment,
to have that experiment,
and even to do that thought experiment, I think, like, to inform it a little bit more, the people in Hamas might say, like, oh yeah, we tried that later and they killed us, and all the people that, like, you wanted to do that are killed. So
the March of Return,
exactly,
in 2019 or 18, I need the exact date, for the March of, for the right of return. There were peaceful demonstrations by Palestinian protesters, and there was a march. It was peaceful, and hundreds shot by Israeli snipers, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, and
March 2018. Thank you, Bradley.
Like, and I think, like, yeah, Sue Neumann. Yeah, I think it's the MK, like, did have civilian casualties, not like at this scale, and like, again, like, it was a conscious matter of trying to minimize that as for the purpose of what they're trying to do. And I'll say, like, if you go back in time, my interest would not be to the extent that, like, a civilian was killed in a sabotage attempt. I blame the apartheid government on that too. I don't blame the MK.
214 Palestinians killed in that peaceful protest. Well, the allusion to Mandela was gonna be humorous, Matt.
Sorry, I had that.
We've been reading a lot of Mandela quotes today because it's applicable. It's important to understanding what he fought against with the apartheid regime in South Africa and what Palestinians deal with the apartheid regime of Israel. He was on the terrorist watch list in the United States until 2008, just to give you a sense of how hostile our institutions are to that kind of those kinds of calls for liberation. One of the greatest human beings I've probably ever shared a planet with, Nelson Mandela, breathed the same air as, and luckily we have somebody to carry the torch forward. The self-proclaimed Mandela of the United States here, speaking at a rally.
I thought you were going to say Rick Santorum, but anyway, go ahead.
Well, oh my God, I forgot about that. Mandela is speaking through this person in New Hampshire, apparently. I'm not sure I recognize him, but here we go.
The people that challenge the results of the election, they don't go after the people that cheated. Those people are free. Those people have no problem. If you want to challenge the result of an election, they hound you. Look what happened this weekend with 2 good people. They hound them and they scare them, but we don't get scared. We don't get scared. I'll tell you what, I don't mind being Nelson Mandela because I'm doing it for a reason. I'm doing it for a reason. Doing it for a reason. We got to save our country from these fascists, these lunatics that we're dealing with. They're horrible people, and they're destroying our country. I talk about threats from within and threats from outside. The threats from within, in my opinion, are far more dangerous than the threats of China and Russia, because if you're smart and you know how to deal, you can hold China and Russia and North Korea. Look at the relationship. North Korea, who's now acting up again, but
he's just like Mandela. Has he compared himself to Martin Luther King yet?
Yeah.
He has.
I'm sure he has.
Has he compared himself to Jesus Christ yet?
I will have to check, but I can't imagine Mandela's the first one.
Another political prisoner just, fighting for justice, completely silenced by government power.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he's an idiot. But it is an interesting time to bring up Nelson Mandela.
I actually do want to return to Mandela.
You want to actually contextualize what Mandela who he was and how he's not it's not that similar to what Trump's going through?
No, unfortunately, I want to make sure I include the full context of Mandela's remarks about terrorism, which included, but if sabotage did not produce the results we wanted, we were prepared to move on to the next stage, guerrilla warfare and terrorism. And that's why, they called him a terrorist and put him in jail. And the question is, do you go back in time and say, well, he's a terrorist? Or do you say this apartheid state that is producing this needs to be removed, regardless of how we feel about that? I feel that. I feel like that Mandela is who I'm going to take instruction from.
Well, let's pull up. Can we find this clip? Actually, I'm sorry. I'm cold doing this for you. But Mandela, just search Nelson Mandela on Palestine. There is a clip. I mean, I posted it on my Instagram too, but I know that's hard to pull up. Just because we're talking about him so much and quoting him, Nelson Mandela saw the similarities and the struggles between the Palestinian people and Black South Africans who were under the apartheid regime.
Settler colonial. I mean, that's exactly
yes.
what Poppy said. And the important sort of qualifications there is a population that, as Poppy also says, whether it's the Israelis or the Huguenots, it's often a ideologically, religiously sort of grouped population that needs to seek refuge somewhere else for reasons of they're being oppressed somewhere.
Yes.
And that.
Yes.
That actually is part of the definition. It's it's not a distinct in Israel's sense. But yeah, we want to play this
as Bradley pulls this up. Yeah, I mean, this is a clip of Mandela. Oh, gosh, this is going to be difficult. It's somewhere 5 minutes in, I think, or maybe not. Maybe this isn't going to work. Maybe yeah, try it here. I watched this a few times recently, so again, this is my fault for not being as
with the PLO, because just like ourselves, they are fighting for the right of self-determination. I went further, however, to say that the support for Yasser Arafat in his struggle does not mean that the ANC has ever doubted the right of Israel to exist as a state legally. We have stood quite openly and firmly for the right of that state to exist within secured borders. But of course, as I said to Mr. Sigmund in Geneva and others, that we carefully define what we mean by secure borders. We do not mean that Israel has the right to retain the territories they conquered from the Arab world, like the Gaza Strip, the Golan Heights, and the West Bank. We don't agree with that. Those territories should be returned to the Arab people.
Mr. Mandela.
I also explained to Mr. Sigmund and company that in our organization, we have Jews. In fact, Mr. Gaddafi did not allow us to open our offices in Libya precisely because we had the courage to say to him, we work with the Jews in our organization. And he didn't allow us to open an office until February this year. when he had to accept us as we are. We are not prepared to be swayed by anybody. We have an independent policy which we accept no matter with whom we discuss. The Jewish leader have any doubts about our stand, I am prepared to address them and to allay their concern, because they are a very important community both in South Africa and of course in the States. And I'm prepared to iron out any differences that might exist. But they must know what our stand is. Arafat is a comrade in arms, and we treat him aside. And as
Yeah, I mean, that was, maybe we missed it, I'm not sure, but I think that we got it at the right time. Either way, good to hear from him in his own words.
There's a more explicit clip where he says it's our struggle too.
Yeah, so that was him kind of essentially rejecting, it's fine, rejecting calls for like disavowal. I guess that was related to Yasser Arafat there, right? But anyway.
But this is, I mean, the terror, you are a supporter of terror thing is the exact same playbook they played on South Africa, on the ANC and the MK. Mm-hmm. And like I said, like Mandela says, like to the extent that our struggle is suppressed, then we do graduate to more violent forms of struggle, because ultimately an apartheid state and the commission of one and the maintenance of one is even more violent than that. Like, and we were looking at like, like that in why we feel like one immediate act of violence by people who are oppressed is like the only place to start, when it's in the context of this sort of massive state violence and oppression of people. Like that, again, I think the parallels are pretty direct, and I think it's on anybody who's defending Israel in this moment to clarify where they think the differences are.
All right, folks, I'm gonna read some IMs and get out of here. Train Boy, I think we can all agree he was a great man, but Michael Brooks has completely ruined Nelson Mandela for me.